Hey, yeah, what? Grab your bootstraps. Yeah, let's scale your growth. Here's the truth, Jack. We'll reach the globe, unveil the notes.
Daniel, what
Learn
the
to pivot,
fuck?
earn your digits. Won't burn, you'll get it. See, this is factual. Funds will show. Learn to flow with Candid Capital.
This is a Candid Capital interview. In these episodes, we host industry business professionals involved in the global tech ecosystem to discuss various topics related to tech, global economy, and building sustainable businesses and investments. Welcome back to the Candid Capital Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. In this episode, the topic is investing in Web3 and building in the Bitcoin ecosystem with the investment manager of Outlier Ventures, Hanan Nor. Welcome, Hanan. Thanks for taking the time to share your thoughts on Web3 in the future.
Thank you for having me, Joshua. Happy to be here.
So you are my first Web3 Accelerator guest, which is super exciting. Anyone who talks to me, at least in the last year, knows that Web3 is kind of my obsession right now. So this is super cool to have you on.
It is everyone's obsession. It's just once you're in, there's no turning back. So be careful.
It's too late. I've gone too far. I'm even using lingo sometimes. my
Or you're
messaging
speaking the degen terms.
Yes. I didn't even have a Discord until earlier this year, so I've been completely taken over. I think on this subject matter. So, how's your year been for Web3?
It has been a flavorful year, a year of many surprises. To be fair, we have more ups than downs, I would say. I have been helping a lot of portfolio companies navigate some challenges over the course of 2023. Also, we had some wins in relations to, projects that, really make big impact in real world use cases. But we also have some challenges in terms of navigating the fundraising environment, navigating the FTX series that really pushed a lot of the fundraising process for some of our portfolio companies to be a bit more challenging because the crypto industry in and of itself is deemed less favorably than the rest. But in general, it's a wonderful year. It has been very flavorful, and we're looking forward for 2024.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited about it. I know this year's flavor is AI, so a lot of the Web3 stuff kind of got forgotten unless it was like really negative. But I think 2024 and 2025 are going to be very exciting years. But before we get into that, I like to start with the origin story. So I would like to know how you got into tech, investments, startups, entrepreneurship, all that stuff, and then why Web3.
Cool. I actually gave this a thought. I am an investment manager at Outlier Ventures for almost 2 years now. Prior to that, I was working with a corporate venture capital for an entity in Europe, which oversees like the Fortune 500 companies. So I was working as part of their marketplace and blockchain studio. So we were looking at developments and projects across the blockchain ecosystem, the core stuff like blockchain for supply chain, blockchain for climate change. So things that has real world use cases. And this led me to really digging deeper into the market space of crypto as a technology first, and then an asset. That's how I got into DeFi in 2019. And prior to that, I was a founder. I founded a company with 3 of my friends. It's a technology company building a proprietary tech. So I've been on the founder side as well as on the venture side. And like if we trace back, my deep passion is actually in policy. So I study international relations at university, and I have a really deep interest in emerging markets and development of different parts of the world. So my passion actually spilled over to the usage of crypto in some of these countries, especially in Latin America and Southeast Asia.
Okay, wow, there's so many questions I have. So for the first part with the corporate venture that you were working on, the blockchain project, was that more of a, I guess, a public chain project that was, or more the decentralized version? Because I'm hearing about these different regional public chains popping up intended to tie into sort of like traditional government services, but on a publicly built public chain. So was it like that?
So we were commissioned to work with a private entity. So it's one of the Fortune 500 companies in Europe. And what we were doing essentially is looking at some of their growth strategies, leveraging blockchain technology, one of which is to expand beyond the B2B market to B2C, utilizing an existing tool that they already have, namely Metaverse. So they have a existing Metaverse asset that they wanted to leverage, and they wanted to see how this could be applied beyond the B2B world and apply it to B2C. As part of the work that we did, we also had an engagement with a big alcohol company in London. So they're one of the biggest alcohol production companies in the world. So we were strategizing their NFT strategy actually, and how this could be used to actually tie into their more like vintage wine collections to some of their biggest wine collectors. I wasn't involved personally in that project, but I was, as part of the team that was involved in that project.
So you also mentioned policy. So
Correct.
I guess what side of the spectrum are you on this policy? Are you for more, again, this comes up in all the, I would say, Web3 conversations, more decentralized, liberalized, I guess you could use, types of technology, or command control merging with Web2?
I think a lot of people in Web3 in general are quite libertarian in our views. I would consider myself as one of them. I think once you've experienced the freedom and liberty that Web3 afforded you, it is really difficult to turn back from the privilege that it provides you. So, for example, I receive my salary in stablecoins, and I have the ability to use that stablecoin in different ways, either to invest in different tokens and assets, or to use that through crypto giving and donate in certain causes that I believe in. And part of that endeavor is to train myself to have full custody over my own asset and my financial freedom. Having said that, I believe that I am in a privileged position in which I have full understanding of how things work from end to end as part of working in the industry. 99% of people do not have that privilege. Therefore, there needs to be proper regulation being set to protect the masses in relations to using crypto as, a product, an asset, a tool moving forward in order for it to receive mass adoption. So I would say I'm like center left in relations to where I stand. I would love for everyone to have the ability to have full custody over their financial issues, or like over their financial assets. But I believe that it comes with a certain privilege of educating oneself, and you have to have the time, and that you have to have the luxury of time to be able to manage those things as well. So yeah, I also appreciate proper regulation and guidance by different governments in making cryptocurrency more accessible to the masses.
Who do you think is, I'd say, the most advanced or the most far ahead in terms of policy in markets? Because I'm hearing, everyone has different ones that they think are there. And it seems like they have certain pieces that they're a little bit more advanced maybe than others, but not, I would say, like the whole picture. Who do you think is the furthest ahead on that?
Are you referring to a country or
Yeah,
a
like
company?
a country, like because as you said, you dip your toes in different emerging markets, and it seems a
Yes.
lot of those places have adopted or are looking at how to adopt these technologies, and so their policies are arguably maybe further ahead. But
Yeah.
is there some that you think are further ahead, lots of work to do? What's your take on
Oh,
that?
there are three countries on top of my head currently that have been in a later stage position in terms of regulations and being crypto friendly. They are the Emirates, the UAE, Singapore, as well as the UK. I think Rishi Sunak has been really open about setting up really clear direction and regulations in relations to crypto adoption, including ways to tax certain entities and incentivizing more innovations coming into the space within cryptocurrency in the UK. In Singapore, you can see a lot of companies being incentivized through tax to set up their entities in Singapore, and you can see so many flourishing Southeast Asian venture capital firms, crypto specific venture capital firms in Singapore and in the UAE. You can see, government funded ecosystems, for example, Hub 71 in Abu Dhabi, commissioning blockchain specific or like digital asset specific accelerator to increase more startups building in the space. And these are some incentives that are actually really founder friendly and can help people to build more products, more innovations within the cryptocurrency space in the 3 countries. So those are the more later stages. I think the more interesting ones that I'm currently looking closely at are the ones in Latin America, specifically Argentina. Since the election of President Milei, I'm really interested to see how his vision in his vision in abolishing the central bank and using crypto as Bitcoin as one of the central assets to materialize, because cryptocurrency and stablecoin specifically in countries like Argentina has been, one of the day-to-day use of Argentinians as a result of like their the valuation of their fiat currency. Another country that I'm really interested in is Turkey, also because they have a very vulnerable currency at the minute. So stablecoins, cryptocurrency is an asset, financial tool that they use truly to empower. I have so many Turkish friends that are some of the earliest adopters of crypto in 2015, 2016, 2017, because they have experienced, the Turkish lira devaluation.
So when you're talking about like the 3 more advanced places, I wouldn't have expected London. So I was just kind of like wondering, like what makes it so advanced? Are they offering, like, I don't know, are they funding Web3 companies? Are they creating some sort of tax breaks? Or are they just saying like you can use crypto? Like what is the big defining difference? I wouldn't have imagined that, because like on this side of the pond, people are still registering everything in Bahamas and other places like that. So I was just kind of wondering, what is it that the UK is doing that's so different from a Western market perspective?
So if you look at the three countries I mentioned, Singapore, UAE, and the UK, they all have 3 big cities that actually promote the adoption of cryptocurrency. So Dubai, named Singapore City, Singapore in itself, and London. So for London specifically, it's not incentive in relations to tax or specific government-driven initiative tax. It's not specifically specific government-driven monetary policy, but they are incentives in terms of like encouraging people to build in a safe, secure, and stable environment. So the UK has been very, very transparent in terms of collaborating between the regulators and the industry players to really understand the industry in and of itself. So for example, one of my really good friends who is one of the leading crypto lawyer in the UK, they have been in a lot of negotiations and a lot of like roundtable discussions with policymakers who are, first of all, interested to really learn about what are the potential of the technology first and foremost. And then they also have been able to produce. I'm not remembering specifically some of the main name of the clauses that they issued, but clarity in terms of like being super friendly to venture funds that are coming into the UK to set up entities there. Welcoming talent would be one of the key advantages that the UK under Rishi Sunak's government has been doing. So they have this incentive called Global Talent Visa, in which digital talent that has either less than 5 years or less than 10 years expertise within a specific domain can gain visa to live and work in the UK with ease, with less restriction. And this incentivizes a lot of like really talented, smart people who works within the digital space, blockchain being one of it, to come to the UK and work for companies or startups or build companies and startups in the UK itself. So I think it's mainly just friendliness towards digital adoption in general, and blockchain being one of it. And I think if we compare London versus Washington, there's a lot more friendliness towards, the education part of crypto. Crypto is not being seen as like a bad asset that can harm people's life, but crypto is seen in the UK as a tool that could further facilitate everyone's financial ability, and it could advance a city like London.
Yeah, I mean, I also I was surprised. I was reading something where the UK was like they wanted to be like a central hub for Web3 or something like that. So I was just kind of curious because like I don't think it's really happened on this side. Things are advancing, but I wouldn't say that much. Not specifically for crypto. It's just like how to make crypto work within the system that we have. That's kind of how I see it, rather than kind of be like, okay, well, how are we going to innovate? How can we make a better system with these new technologies as opposed to making it fit with something, different than that came before?
True. But I think it's all about, like, if you're a founder, the first thing that you want, there are like 99 problems that you have to face on a daily basis. The one problem that you don't want to have is just like stability in terms of where you want to incorporate your company, right? And where you want to be based at to run your company. And, I would say that the UK is, one of the better ones. And I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal, which has like an amazing tax incentive. And there's a huge Web3 community here that have flourished as a result of some of the tax incentives that the Portuguese government have enabled. For example, the non-habitual tax incentive. There's also visas like digital nomad visa, encouraging a lot of like crypto players to come to where there's a lot of other crypto players in the industry. So Gnosis is one of the companies that's based in Portugal. There's a lot of like accelerators here as well. And I think because of the nature of competition within Europe, like London is learning from Lisbon, so is other cities. But London, just in nature being the financial hub of Europe, they don't want to be left behind. Therefore, they have to be open to the idea of crypto coming in, because whether they like it or not, people are adopting to crypto.
That's interesting because also, you mentioned digital nomad, and I also, that is one of my interests, and it also seems to work really well with Web3. I visited many of the different nomad countries just to get a sense of the different ones. Argentina is on my list, and even more so now, which I'm following that. And yes, I've shared all the funniest and best videos of the current situation there. So I'm pretty excited because I think it's a little bit different than El Salvador. El Salvador has a lot of just general issues to work out, whereas Argentina, it's I would say more economic policy issues, and also around sort of like their trade laws and whatnot. Whereas with El Salvador, it's kind of like they got to fix lots of things. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in Argentina. I mean, I'm rooting for it, but we'll
How's your
see.
Spanish?
It's okay.
Habla español?
Un poquito, but it depends. It, like, I've studied it for many years, so it's in my head. It doesn't always work. It's just like if I go to a Spanish speaking country, I have no choice, so my brain just tries to find answers. But if I'm like in Canada or the US or somewhere where there's English, then my brain's just like, what? I don't understand. So it all depends. There's always a great mix on that. And so the other thing I wanted to get into a little bit from you describing your background is the metaverse. I'm obsessed with the metaverse. I love the idea of it, the concept of it. Most people think it's crazy talk that I speak to in the regular, I would say, tech industries that are doing more like SaaS or telecom or something like that. They kind of think that it's kind of like, it was 2018 when we had the VR Pokemon Go thing happen, and then everyone forgot about it. And now it's come back as an expanded technology with the metaverse. And I think it's super exciting. And there's so much going on in Europe. That's what I look forward to about going to tech conferences in Europe, is seeing what industry is doing with the metaverse. So I am interested to hear your take on what you think about the metaverse.
What I think about the metaverse. So
Yes.
Outlier Ventures specifically has developed two theses. One is the open metaverse thesis, and the other is the open metaverse thesis fighting back. Generally, we are one of the earliest investors in the metaverse in general. So we believe in the potential that it brings, and we believe in the ability for it to shape culturally how the society works and how businesses work, how businesses innovate in terms of growth and engagement with their communities, all of that one, really wonderful stuff. But for me personally, I come from a very, traditional TradFi background as well as, bread and butter founder background. So I like to look at like real world use cases first before going to anything metaverse. Having said that, this is my personal opinion, not like one of my colleagues. I know so many people that are interested in the metaverse, specifically within the gaming space. There's so much innovations happening there, lucrative opportunities. There's so many new jobs that you've never heard 2 3 years ago. So for example, like game designer that specify on like purchasable assets. So like new things that you buy within games that you've never even think that's a job. It is a specific job. So I think the metaverse can bring three different opportunities. Firstly, it could culturally shapes a different ways in which we interact, either socially or economically, through how businesses interact with consumers and how we interact with like new tools. And secondly, the metaverse has an impact in relations to creating new economic opportunities. So the gaming and job opportunities is one area that I can specify as an example, but there are plentiful of other different, lucrative opportunities that came off of the back of the metaverse being a booming industry. And thirdly, and more importantly, I think it's just a very lucrative innovation space where one metaverse in and of itself could not work to make it like a big industry. It has to interact with other metaverses, and it has to have like strong enough network effect for the industry as a whole to be really lucrative. If we take some examples of like more Web2 metaverses, so for example, Roblox, like ask any 10-year-old who doesn't know Roblox, and you'll be surprised to meet any of them. Most 10-year-olds I know have been introduced to Roblox, even participating in protests online, and purchasing like what people want for Christmas now is not books or toys. They want like Roblox tokens or money for Roblox, right? So this is one example of perfect use cases in which the metaverse in this generation have fully immersed themselves like into a city or an ecosystem in which they are able to build. They could play their own game, they could build their own city, and then push that through to interact with their friends. So I think replicating some of those successes in on-chain would be our next steps. And we've seen plenty of projects building on this across music, across gaming, across sports. But as I said, there are a lot of people that are interested in it. Me personally, I'm not very much a metaverse person. I would consider myself more infrastructure or DeFi. And that's where my interest lies.
Well, I would say that is great because now I can tell you about some metaverse stuff.
Nice.
Just kidding. But like I agree, the gaming for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that gaming has been credited at advancing the tech industry in general. Like if you just follow the history of it, having better graphics. You don't need better graphics for a better Excel sheet. So, if you just watch the progression. And so I do think that, whatever innovations that come out there is going to trickle out into industry spaces. And so for the metaverse, I am specifically interested in the industrial metaverse. And it's a conversion of different technologies because the telcos are are working on that type of stuff, offering those kinds of services. Because theoretically, if you add in AI and IoT and edge computing and all that kind of stuff along with it, you could theoretically operate a manufacturing facility from your house, if you're building
Interesting.
a smart one. And there's just been some interesting cases where they've done digital twins, where they have been able to save money, production costs. You can also do prototyping. So, there are car companies that are also investing in this because it's cheaper. The idea is that you can build the parts and components. You could crash the cars in your industrial metaverse instead of crashing the real car, the test, how safe it is and things like that. So I think there's a lot of interesting potential for it for sure.
Fascinating. I'll definitely look into it. Industrial metaverse.
Oh yeah, I definitely think it's really exciting. And I mean, of course, when you go to like Mobile World Congress, they're gonna have different stuff there, the kind of showcase. Just like when you go to car shows, you get to see the cars you'll never ever be able to buy because they're just concept. I'm just hoping that it goes beyond concept. And I look to markets like what is Korea doing? Because they're already talking about 6G. They're already doing metaverse as a service and different stuff like that. So it would be cool because they put in the infrastructure immediately. Like that's just the way they operate. Whereas we have to wait for the right set of elements together in order to get those kinds of things. So like I said, I think it'll be very interesting. I think it's exciting. It's an area that I'm watching for sure. So for Web3, I was just wanting to know, like, how are you defining it? Because I think it's more or less been decided, well, from my point of view, because I kind of just follow what Gardner writes. So if they create a whole, category and they describe it, I kind of use that as my map for tech industry verticals. However, there's some that it's only decentralized blockchain, it's only blockchain, or whatnot. Some say it's metaverse, some say it's a group of technologies. Some is how you're interacting with the internet. So how are you guys defining Web3?
That's a heavy question because, as you know, Outlier Ventures is one of the most active Web3 investor, and we have like an all-encompassing definition of this purposely so we can tap into different sections of innovations within the space. And I think Web3 for me specifically is the intersection between innovation in the blockchain space and bringing that on chain, as well as anything that leverages distributed ledger technology to further ease what has been done in Web2, but in a more faster, simpler, secure way. And obviously, underpinning all of that, there are certain ideologies that we believed in. So we believe in the idea of decentralization. So, for example, in order for you to hold, we talk about financial custody earlier in the podcast. So, for example, the ability to really have full visibility of where your money comes from and like track different transactions, have that data visibility. So the decentralization component is really important. And at the same time, we also want it to be really secure. So if you look at like the blockchain trilemma, you have decentralization, you have security, and you have scalability. So more often than not, we look at the ability of a project to solve at least 2 of 3 of the within the blockchain trilemma. So I know it's a long-winded answer to your question. It's like, what is Web3? But to us, it's just an intersection between innovation and utilizing blockchain as a technology, as well as distributed ledger, putting assets on chain, and all those different innovation. When we look at a team, for example, that are building when we look at different teams that are building in Web3, we always ask them, so what is the Web3 angle to this specifically? And a lot of them will have really good answers for it because either they use like proprietary tech that it's not available yet in Web2, or they use certain form of cryptocurrency as a financial means in facilitating the project that they want to do, or they use fungible assets and non-fungible assets in facilitating this, like NFTs and other digital form of digital assets.
Well, I wasn't expecting to get the answer. Everyone has a different view on Web3, so I guess we didn't solve it today, but we did for us. So this takes me to kind of like jump in a little bit more about Outlier Ventures. So could you tell me, I guess, what is Outlier Ventures?
Oh, so Outlier Ventures is the most active Web3 investor in the space. We invest specifically in early stage companies and accelerate their growth through 360-degree support. So if you are a founder and you come into the accelerator program that we have, we will give you first and foremost a set amount of money to help you develop your product or build your company from the moment you join the program. But we also provide you with tangible and non-tangible support, including legal, marketing, growth. That's more on the business development side, but we also have the more Web3 specific strategies and experts like token design, NFT strategy, product and tech to make sure that you can execute the best smart contract, for example. And we have done this through the best experts in the industry. Some of our SMEs, subject matter experts, have been in the industry for since 2012. Outlier Ventures specifically have been around since 2014. So we offer insights and advice that are unrivaled. We definitely know the space better than most. And we also partner with great commercial partners and venture partners to allow the team to grow in different areas. So for example, one of the latest partnerships that we have is with Walmart, the biggest retailer in the world, together with a venture partner called Candid Capital, as well as KPMG Ventures, who is helping us throughout the program as well as part of the Walmart program, specifically looking at companies building in decentralized commerce. So these are like really unique synergies that only Outlier has, in which the flavor to the accelerator program is giving you as much exposure as possible to the best teams in the world, the best venture partners in the world, and the best advisors in the world to help you get that 360-degree support to flourish and grow and scale and bringing your projects to the next level.
So for the companies that are interested to get into the program, is it pre-revenue, or do you have to have a certain amount of revenue? Like what are kind of like the requirements? Because I'm different accelerators. I mean, I guess I kind of view most entities like this that are pre-revenue more of an incubator, and an accelerator more of like you have some commercial traction of some sort and already an MVP. So are you doing both, or is it one or the other?
Correct. Typically, a project that comes to us will already have a product in mind, either in the POC stage or moving towards MVP. And then we actually have a very flexible answer to that question, because we invest in, as early as an idea stage up to post revenue. But the reason being, the sweet spot would fall under post product pre revenue. And a lot of the founders that we have, we really assess them on their ability and credibility as the founder, first and foremost, because, regardless of the idea, the founder has to be able to execute on those ideas. And we also look at, so there are 3 stages that I always speak to founders in terms of what we look for. So we look for, first and foremost, compatibility with our thesis. So Outlier Ventures work within a specific program pipeline. So for example, we have a DeFi specific one, we have a partnership with Polygon, we have one specific on ZK. We look, and within each program, there's a specific thesis that we outlined. For example, with the Bitcoin program, we wanted to invest in 3 key areas like infrastructure, DeFi within Bitcoin, as well as the ordinal space. So we look at, first and foremost, whether or not they are compatible with the thesis that we have. Secondly, we look at like the context, whether or not the idea that they have or the product that they're building match the skills and the market that they're targeting. And then finally, we look at crypto nativeness. This doesn't apply to all programs, but can apply to more specific ones like Bitcoin. So in order for you to build on Bitcoin, you have to be a crypto native founder that understands the ideology behind the digital asset, as well as understand why you want to be on Bitcoin in comparison to other ecosystem.
Okay, interesting. Well, that kind of takes me to my next question. So you have a new program um, related to the Bitcoin ecosystem. I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about that one. I believe that you're launching it early next year.
Yeah, so we are in recruitment right now looking for Bitcoin founders who wants to build within the Bitcoin ecosystem. So this is something that has been proven super rewarding because most of the founders that I've spoken to that are building in Bitcoin are just a different breed of founders. They are smart, they are determined, they are ideological driven, and most importantly, they are very, very generous in sharing resources and referring us to other founders. So the program, back to the program itself, we're looking across three different areas. So one is the area of DeFi or programmable finance. So we're looking for solutions built directly on the Bitcoin network or its meta layers. So applications such as decentralized exchanges, borrowing, AMM, and others. The second area we're looking at is infrastructure. So we look at scaling infrastructure like layer twos, bridges, anything that can bridge Bitcoin to the EVM compatible layers. We look at privacy enabling innovations, leveraging zero knowledge, taproot assets. And the final element that we look for is any applications leveraging asset issuance capabilities such as ordinals, subscriptions, and BRC20. So if you are not familiar with some of these wordings, don't worry because I'm happy to give my contact at the end and you can reach out to us and we can talk about more about building on Bitcoin because it's the most fascinating space. So just a quick note, because you asked me earlier, like what's the difference? What is my definition of Web3? I feel like recruiting founders building on Bitcoin, it feels like it's crypto and not Web3. So it's the essence of like the good old days where crypto was still crypto and at its early infancy, and there's so many innovations that we can make and so many tools we can play with, and the community sense is a lot stronger in comparison to Web3 where everything is not necessarily badly but like it's being mass produced or there's a lot more adoption across other ecosystems. For now, Bitcoin feels a lot more nostalgic. I don't know how to put that into words, but you get me.
Well, yeah, no, I definitely do. I mean, you can feel the energy and excitement about Bitcoin. I mean, it probably has nothing to do with the halving coming up at all, but there's a lot of excitement about it. And I was just kind of wondering because like I'm not technical, so I don't know again a lot of the words that you said. I'm going to have to look them up after. But
That's
I
okay.
was kind of wondering why are developers coming back to Bitcoin to develop this stuff? Like why not before? Like what has changed? Is it just because there's more coins?
Not necessarily. I think what has changed are twofold. One, the ecosystem is mature enough to adopt more developers coming into the ecosystem. So we have, for example, innovation like BRC20 tokens, finally demonstrating that there is ability to issue assets on the Bitcoin blockchain itself. So these are innovations that doesn't happen before. BRC20 was just in January 2023. So this is a very recent development. And I also think the second reason would be the movement in the ideology. In the past, a lot of people look at Bitcoin as just as an asset for them to hold, right? So there's a lot of demand from its holders for Bitcoin to be used as to utilize the Bitcoin that they have, but no specific pressure for it to develop more broadly, because there's a huge actually what we call like the red-eyed Bitcoiners, the Bitcoin maxis who wants to make sure that Bitcoin is just an asset that we hold. Therefore, when the supply is fixed, there's more demand, the value goes up, yada yada yada. But we also think there are other factions within the Bitcoin community that wants to further leverage and utilize the Bitcoin that they have and innovating across different applications layer to use Bitcoin to serve a large number of underserved users. And this desire for scaling has driven a lot of the adoption within the Bitcoin network, and actually driven a lot of developers into the ecosystem. And also, I mean, if there's a third reason, I also think it's because some of the new technologies within the Bitcoin ecosystem has finally come to a position where it can be mass adopted. Like, for example, the discrete log contracts. I know this is a very specific and technical terms, but it's a special type of Bitcoin transaction that executes a smart contract with information provided by an oracle. So like a more technical Bitcoin founder would understand how using the DLC, for example, could lead to Bitcoin into Ethereum, for example. And then there's also like synthetic asset model, like SBTC, which is a synthetic asset model on the Stacks blockchain that allows users that own Bitcoin to swap Bitcoin for SBTC, and then they can use this SBTC on other different ecosystems and to use it on a lots of weird and wonderful use cases. So those are the three reasons as to why developers are now coming to Bitcoin. And I think final reason for me is learning from the lessons of building on Ethereum and other ecosystems, right? Ethereum mainly the biggest one. So we found a lot of Bitcoin founders coming from a specific role within the Ethereum ecosystem. So they were either like a product person in an L2 in Ethereum, a layer 2 in Ethereum, coming into Bitcoin because they were always a firm believer of Bitcoin, and now they want to apply what they've learned in building on other ecosystems into the Bitcoin ecosystem, because it's still fresh. There's not a lot of builders building on it, so they can have that first mover advantage.
So for building on it, for someone who holds Bitcoin, what do they have a greater advantage because they own Bitcoin on these different potential products? Like, is it going to work similar to staking, where your Bitcoin is somehow given to a pool of developers to use it for some purpose and you get some sort of return?
I think existingly there are certain innovations like that, which I can't quote, but we are also looking for projects utilizing those use cases. So we're looking at projects that look at Bitcoin as one asset, and then how do we make it flourish and grow? So either use it as, replicating some of the use cases that are already existing in Ethereum, for example, for staking, for having like higher APY, for remittances, a lot of these different use cases that are already existing in Ethereum. But Ethereum is a different digital asset altogether. Now we want to focus on Bitcoin. So yes, that's why we are partaking on this program.
Interesting. Is there any particular, problem that is going to be targeted with Bitcoin that's new and interesting that you can talk about that is exciting to you? Like if there was like one.
Yeah. So it is only through my engagement in this recruitment cycle that I discovered so many wonderful use cases of Bitcoin in emerging markets, specifically in Latin America. And we've discussed briefly, I've mentioned how in Argentina people use it because of the devaluation of the Argentinian peso, and in Turkey. But actually people in Latin America have used it on, a lot of use cases. So buying Bitcoin through WhatsApp, have you heard about that? I haven't until I met, some founders.
Though.
Yeah, people actually buy digital asset, not just Bitcoin, but like different stable coins through WhatsApp. And this is like a really interesting use cases that have been booming in Nigeria as well. And people use alternative assets as well as Bitcoin to pay freelancers through like a neobank-like entity that pays freelancers in stablecoin. The fundamental of it is just using a more stable and lucrative digital asset in a comparison to using the existing fiat money. There's so many other wonderful use cases that we see in the infrastructure space, building, toolings for developers to build on the Bitcoin ecosystem, like developer SDK, Launchpad, etc., that we're also looking at within Latin America. And a lot of the founders in Latin America specifically really focus on targeting the region first and foremost, because surprise, surprise, one of the highest or the biggest Bitcoin adoption in the world is in that part of the world, in that region.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, they do everything on WhatsApp in a lot of places in Latin America. So why not Bitcoin, I guess?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And sometimes the biggest learning that I learned from this recruitment cycle is sometimes we are so insulated and in our Western bubble that it humbles me for the bubble to be poked by some of these founders. Look, there are different ways of doing things. Look, just because it works in Europe and it works in the Western world doesn't mean it works in different parts of the world. They are so rich in different cultural nuances and they are so rich in different ways of working. So as an investor, you have to think not only through, okay, will this work? Like in projecting the profitability of a certain project, we have to like go beyond, the realms of our bubbles and really look through and empathize and try to put ourselves in their shoes to see how this could flourish. Therefore, we could sort of like triangulate how big the market would be, how much potential this has. But at the end of the day, if you can find a good founder, the product usually will work.
Yeah, no, I've seen that as well. It seems like the same problem in another place, but they solve it differently because it's on the surface level, it appears the same problem, but when you take all the multi-factors involved, it is not. And so some of the tech that is built in one country doesn't always translate easily into another one, at least from what I've seen. So I was, this is probably a bit of a deep question. But for those who want to get into investing in Web3, do you have some advice or a specific, I would say, thing that they should be aware of that is very much different than you would for traditional tech in how you're assessing what companies to look at for your investments?
So there are two layers to that question. First of all, people wanting to get into crypto or like blockchain in general, and then two, investing in crypto. So I'm not at a position to give financial advice, but I give the same to friends and family when they are interested in getting to know crypto a little bit better. First and foremost, to understand your why. Why are you interested in it? Are you driven by like the monetary value? Are you driven by the technological innovations? And both reasons work, right? And then secondly is to play around with the tools, because only when you play around with the tools, you'll be able to learn more. It's as simple as like setting up a wallet. You have to do it yourself, or find someone that are able to teach you in some ways, like watch different YouTube videos and get on it, because then you can understand, okay, these are some of my pain points, this is what I learned, etc. But there's also a simple way of just going to like your nearest neobank who provides the opportunity to buy cryptocurrencies. That's the first answer to you, the first part, which is how to get into crypto in general. And the second part is like, what are some of the metrics or guidelines in which we use or I use when looking at a team? So because we invest in early stage companies, it's different than like looking at investments for companies that have matured and then therefore launch their token. So it's a different ball game altogether. When you're looking at early stage companies, a lot of the times you're looking at two key criteria, the 3 C's that I mentioned, but mainly the founder and the product. But when you're looking at stage companies or like tokens in general in Bitcoin, there's a lot of like weird elements that has no fundamental whatsoever based on my experience. So sometimes you have to follow the narrative. Sometimes you have to follow, where the crowd goes. If you look at Dogecoin, there's no specific use cases or business model there, but it is one that is driven by like a really strong ideology and narrative, so people invest in it. And a lot of the time
for Dogecoin, wasn't your the investment thesis Elon Musk? Like, Wasn't that what George?
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Implicitly enriches the narrative, not to, I don't have the legal capacity to pay Elon's lawyer. But my point is, it takes a bit of time to play around with the system to know the system. Once you get a good grip of like how people think, how the masses think, and what people think the masses think, then that's when the narrative would go, and you can purchase those more riskier assets. But I also, as a personal investor, I really look at like fundamentals. So some of the companies that I invest in terms of token, the ones where I know they have like strong partnerships, I look at like really strong trajectory in terms of revenue, because I'm at heart a value investor first and foremost.
And I go to a lot of different conferences, and I was wondering if there was one that sticks out to you related to Web3 or blockchain that you think is a must go.
Oh my God, people in crypto goes to conference all the time. Sometimes when you said like, where are you? When friends or my mom call me and say, where are you? Like, I'm in different conferences every 2 months. So the nearest one coming to us in February is ETH Denver. So it's an event organized by Spark DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. I went to it this year in 2023. I had a lot of fun, but Denver in general is, far away for a lot of people to reach. So if you have the capacity and, the privilege to go, I would recommend you to check it out. But there's also a lot of different conferences happening at the same time, usually happening in parallel with hackathons organized by ETH Global, which is an entity that encourages developers building on Ethereum. So there's ETH Global happening in Sydney next year. There's ETH Global happening in Belgium in parallel to Ethereum CC conference in Belgium in July. But the one that I would always recommend is CON, which is Developer Connect. They haven't announced where it will be held yet, but it will be in November 2024 in Southeast Asia. I'm really excited because I'm from Southeast Asia. I'm from Malaysia, and the ability to just, engage more with the crypto community in Southeast Asia is super appealing to me. And yeah, there's a lot of websites. If you just Google Web3 Conference 2024, you'll see a lot of lists from, Digital Nomad Club, Crypto Nomad Club, Ethereum Foundation. So these are more like Ethereum specific conferences. There's also Bitcoin ones like Bitcoin Madeira happening in March. They're targeting specifically Bitcoin people. There will be like Jack from Twitter, Lynn Alden, who is like a economist that I admire. A lot of people will come to Madeira for that to discuss Bitcoin specifically. So yeah, you'll never run short of Bitcoin conference.
Oh no, for sure. We'll never run short of any conferences ever in general. But as a veteran, I think that's a good start for anyone looking to really kind of where to start. Because as you said, I mean, there's just so many. So we're coming up to the top of the hour here. So now we're just going to go to random questions before we close off. And so, so the first one, we'll start with the tech ones, and then we'll kind of move into some others. So the first one is, what is your favorite productivity tool?
My favorite productivity tool is actually Google Sheet. I am an Excel girly, true and true. I track my life through Excel sheet like nobody's business. I have set up like a shortcut from Excel, Google Sheet. Google Sheet in particular, not Excel. I used to be an Excel girly, now Google Sheet. Put it into my phone, and then every transaction that I have, without missing a single thing, I'll put it on the Excel spreadsheet. And I came from TradFi, so it's part of my blood. That's my favorite productivity tool. But I know what is an anti-productivity tool.
Okay, what's that?
Instagram and TikTok. I would recommend to delete it.
Oh, yes. No, I don't have TikTok. I was going to, and then I'm like, no, just don't. So the Instagram, still working on it, but the TikTok, I decided not to do that. Just the videos are just, It's going to be a time suck for sure.
Yep.
Next question. Since it's 2023, we have to talk a little bit about AI. So I would say, what is your favorite AI tool? If you don't have one, are there any interesting ones you're currently exploring?
My favorite AI tool actually is Shazam. Is it weird to say that?
Okay.
Shazam is an app that enables you to track immediately what kind of music that you're listening to with zero context, and they can also give you a little bit of nuances. This sounds like, etc. The latest version. I also like, because I love music, and I think music is part of my life, and we're so embedded with different algorithms, so that's why I love Shazam. I know there's a lot of conversations in relation to ChatGPT and Gemini in relations to Google DeepMind. I used to work really closely with some of the folks at Google DeepMind actually in 2020. So I'm really proud of the achievement that they've done. But yeah, the kinds of things that I think about in relations to AI are the simplest things that I can do on my daily life. How do you make my music exposure to music a lot better? How can I make sure that I don't miss my appointment through different AI tools? So yes, I would say that, because I'm not really exploring it much as in comparison to other people, but I know it's everywhere in my life.
Well, now that you mentioned DeepMind, I gotta ask, and I mean, if you can't say, just give me a signal. Have they invented Skynet over at Google? Like, have they?
I have no idea, but I know when in 2020, speaking to a lot of the people there, they had this protein sequencing technology that was really innovative and helps in so many, because protein is in everything, right? In a lot of things. So protein sequencing mechanism that they have built through different algorithms enabled them to cure different diseases, helps to cure different diseases, can build certain material products. So it's a very innovative tool back then in 2019, 2020, when AI was not a thing. So I'm so happy that they have reached the level that they are at the minute.
Okay. So, no on the consciousness.
Not.
Is there any interesting health or wellness products that you're using in terms of tech? Like a Fitbit
Yep.
or something like that.
I use Fitbit on a regular basis, and I pair this with my classes. So very simple. I have a set routine. Every morning, I will wake up and do my stretches, and then 3 times a week I'll do Pilates through ClassPass. Not endorsement, but I'm just a huge fan. And then I track everything through Fitbit. And then, like I said, I'm an Excel Google Sheet girly. So sometimes I track my sleeping hours also on Google Sheet. I just like the manual part of it. I know a lot of people are a bit different and they like the automation, and that's why maybe I don't use a lot of AI product. But yeah, I think Fitbit is really useful to enable me to understand how I sleep and how I breathe and how I perform in different classes.
Yeah, cool. What are you currently reading? And if you don't read, what you're listening to? And
I read a lot. I'm an avid fiction reader, actually. So because my day-to-day activity is dealing with a lot of factual, solid things, I try to escape. My favorite book, and I would recommend to everyone, is called The 40 Rules of Love. It's by Elif Shafak, a Turkish writer. It's set on a scene of fiction, non-fiction, looking at the journey of Al-Jalal Rumi. So he's a poet and a scholar based on Turkish literature. And it's just a book filled with wisdom. And sometimes I apply those wisdom even in my investment career as well as like my day-to-day activity.
cool. I'll have to check it out. And next question is, again, this one, hit or miss, I guess. So what is your favorite sci-fi show or movie?
Very interesting question, because until last year, I'm anti-sci-fi. I really do not like sci-fi until 2021 sorry, 2022. But now I'm a huge fan. So I recently, after really, really late, watched the movie Inception. And I love the concept of, like a dream within a dream within a dream. I also currently reading Dune and recently went to Yemen, an island off like in the coast of Yemen, and experienced the Dune life, So I was like living my Dune moment in during that vacation. So that was really interesting, and I can't wait for movie 2 of Dune.
Well, there's a series called, I think, The Peripheral. It's an Amazon production. So it's
Peripheral, okay.
Yeah, I would say it's sort of it's not as like good as Inception. Inception's, it's unique, but it kind of takes some of those ideas along with adding in sort of a multi-metaverse concept into it. So might be something of interest. I think it came out last year or the beginning of this year, but it was an interesting one for sure. And if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice in the industry other than buy as much Bitcoin as possible, what would it be?
I don't even think I would give myself that advice because I believe in DCAing. So you just dollar cost average it. I would say to myself, especially to women investors and women participants in the crypto industry, to not self-doubt yourself as much. It's a very male-dominated industry, and sometimes you get lost in all the noise and you have this inferiority that comes off the back of not being degen enough. But there's value in being a very systematic strategic investor. There's value in the fact that you are able to really control your emotions before investing in any tokens, and there's value in some of the experiences that you've brought from being a woman, coming from traditional backgrounds, etc., that can be applied to cryptocurrency. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that, and I was one of the victims of just feeling a bit unsure of whether or not crypto is for me. It's super male dominated, but now the industry is flourished with wonderful women, and I'm proud to be one of them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. So that kind of wraps up all my questions. So if there's anything you would like to shout out or to let the audience know about, this would be the time to do that.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Joshua. I think my only final remark is, if you're interested to learn about Outlier Ventures in general or crypto in general, do reach out. I can be reached out at Hanan Nor at outlierventures.io or Hananis _ That's HANANYSS _ on Twitter. My DMs are open and I'm happy to chat, especially if you're a founder or like just a player in the industry. Really, really, really looking forward to like bounce off ideas and chat. So yes, again, thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you for coming on and telling us everything you had to share related to Web3, Bitcoin, and all the rest. You can find information about the Candid Capital Podcast on the website, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Episodes can be found on Spotify and other podcast platforms. A quick reminder that this is infotainment and is not intended to be professional advice, malicious, or hateful. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of employers, partners, and their subsequent connected private and public associations or organizations.
We candid, I hope you understand it. Your business growth, we planned it, yeah. This ain't for show, we stamped it, yeah. No FOMO, everyone come join, no solo. This all factual, from me to you, this Candid Capital.